where he worked as general counsel and company secretary. From 2015, Jonny has focused on his work as an executive coach, presenter, and facilitator, working with senior executives and groups to encourage personal and business growth in pursuit of their goals. And I'm sure he is going to inspire us all this evening as well. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's special guest, Jonny Searle MBE. Welcome, Jonny. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Running back through a bit of my life there, reminding me of a few things. Yeah, no, I'm good right now. I've just been on the rowing machine. Still do a little bit even now. So Tuesday and Thursday nights, I nights do some little bit like this actually, a kind of Zoom rowing machine session with some friends. So still a bit out of breath. No, not quite.
So how have you been coping through this pandemic?
I've been trying to find the positives of it. So actually, I just touched on one thing there. Because of the sport I did, rowing, I can do that at home. So I've got a rowing machine in the side of the house in the shed. So I go down there a few days a week, and that's been nice to just get fit and strong again. I realized, having had a lot of my life being fit and healthy, how important that was. So I've been able to eat carefully, and so that's been quite fun. So just general well-being and health. My younger son is in his last year at school, and actually that's been really nice to spend a lot of time with him. My older boy went off to university a few years ago, so I guess I'm sort of appreciating this stage of my life where my two boys are getting older, and yeah, so that's been fun to spend time with him. So there's bits that are obviously a lot worse than my life before, but there's bits that are better.
We are so pleased to have you on our virtual JLGB programme tonight. We've been boosting positivity and keeping children and their families active, healthy and entertained for 46 solid weeks since the first lockdown began last March. And now more than 100 episodes later, and we've been viewed nearly online by 3 million people, thanks to the help of special guests just like you helping us each evening. So why did you feel like it was important to come and join us this evening?
Honestly, a friend asked me. A friend said, "Would I come and be interviewed?" And I suppose my feeling is, if there's something I've got to say that is either interesting to people, or mildly amusing, or useful, or gets people thinking, then I'm really happy to share my stories, my experiences, and maybe get people thinking about their lives. So I suppose it's a general remit of perhaps challenging people's thinking, sharing some stories of my own that may be useful to people. So, yeah.
Thank you. And as you've heard all about the acts of kindness here at JLGB, we always ask our guests what they've been doing to help others. So is there anything particular that you have done during this lockdown that has helped with acts of kindness? Okay,
good question. Yeah, that's I suppose at some level, I feel like a lot of my day-to-day work involves working with people on a one-to-one basis. So I do coaching with people. So a lot of that is with people maybe dealing with some of the pressure through lockdown, the pressures they might be feeling at the moment. Also, I suppose people leaving jobs. So often some of my work is around people who are leaving jobs, not always because they're choosing to leave their jobs. And so I suppose you could say it's an act of kindness at some level to support people doing that. And I did a little bit of work around Essex Council have got some wellbeing type projects going on with people, sort of trying to support them with kind of resilience and mental fitness and finding ways to deal with the pressure they're facing. So I don't know if you call those kindness, but I suppose doing things that I suppose will help people perhaps be a bit happier if they're feeling a bit stressed or a bit under the weather. So yeah, I suppose I could call it that.
Very nice. So if you don't mind, could we go back to the beginning, and can I ask about your childhood? And was growing up, did you have anything similar to JLGB, a youth movement that you got involved in?
I was in the Cubs. I don't know if that even still exists, but I guess that was like the junior scouts, wasn't it? Yeah, no, I did that when I was young. Quite enjoyed that. Why did I? I remember going on a camp actually and being really homesick when I went on a camp actually. So that I think was a little bit of it's a sort of memory I have of it. So and then I don't know why. I think I moved schools when I was about 11. Got some other interests at the new school, and then eventually started rowing, and rowing took a lot of time. So yeah, I suppose I had something certainly when I was younger that was similar, and I wasn't the best at getting badges. We had this sort of badges scheme of different things you could get. I was probably there more for just meeting people, and we played a lot of games, and generally had it's a social part probably for me rather than the learning skills was what I really got out of it.
So on the topic of rowing, was rowing always a passion of yours? Like, where did your interest begin, and did you ever think about competing in the Olympics?
Yeah, I think when I was young, sport was always really important to me. My mum was a sports teacher, was a PE teacher, so I guess I grew up with watching sport, being interested in sport. My parents watched sport, so that was quite important to me. Wanted to be a footballer when I was young. I guess lots of young people have that. So it was on telly. And then I went to a school. Well, you said earlier, I went to Hampton, and it was a new sport. I didn't know anything about rowing. I just thought, I'll try this. Might be interesting. I'd been okay at football and rugby and cricket and the other sports at the school. And I just thought I'll have a go at rowing. Might be nice. And don't know. I just took to it. I think you said something early on about commitment and perseverance and determination or something like that. And I don't know if anyone watching has done rowing, but I would say this is the number one attribute to be good at rowing is perseverance, determination, commitment, because as you'll know from watching it, it's pretty much the same movement again and again. So that sort of commitment to practice and to be determined to get a little bit better and to push it a little bit harder. So I suppose it was a coming together of the sport that I was on offer and perhaps natural affinity with determination and commitment, which I guess I could bring to it.
Very nice. Now, one of our trustees is a massive super fan, and since the moment you were announced as a guest, he wanted to be involved and ask you a question. But before we unleash Adam to ask all about your gold medal winning race, for those that haven't seen that dramatic moment when you, your brother Greg, and Gary Herbert won the gold medal in 1992 Barcelona Olympics, here's a quick clip. Roll VT.
And they're coming and coming again, and the Avognalis are tiring, and they're going to go through them. I think they could do it.
There was a point where we were rowing along, and I was looking at their bow man, my opposite man, and we were coming up, and then he just kind of stopped rowing. He was done.
And they are there. The Searle brothers have beaten the Avognalis, and that is a great achievement.
What a fantastic race! What an amazing upset!
From the Searle brothers today, it was sheer guts and courage, and it all got to little Gary Herbert as well a bit at the end there, didn't it?
Yeah, I recognise that voice commentating. It was funny.
Amazing. Jonny, it's a real privilege to have you on as someone that watched that race live, probably a lot older than some of the youth within the Zoom, and watching it was really one of the most memorable Olympic moments, and a huge Olympic moment. Obviously, a few questions, and we're going to have a good conversation about it. At the time, yourself, Greg, and Gary were up against, what in rowing were the force to be reckoned with in the Avognalis brothers, and probably as advertised were firm favourites. Did you believe before the race, that you could do it? But certainly, it was probably one of the most dramatic finishes to, a race or an Olympic sport. And obviously there was a lot of other moments in that 92 Olympics that probably came from that moment that gave other medalists the belief. What was kind of the moment you knew that you could do it, obviously near the end, but also before?
Yeah, okay. So two questions. There was the before bit and then on the day. So yeah, I mean, it might sound a bit weird, but the reason I ended up there in '92 was Zara, you asked me about when I started rowing, and I started rowing when I was about 12. But when I was 14, 15, a teacher at our school, a history teacher, won a gold medal at the 1984 Olympics. And I'd been rowing for a couple of years at that point, and we were quite strong. We were the sort of best school in the country. And I was one of the best people in the boat. So actually, it started in probably 1984, so 8 years before that. And I look back now and think it was a bit of a weird connection I made, that I was one of the best under 15 rowers in the country. And I knew a guy who'd won an Olympic gold medal. And somehow I made this connection that, it's possible to win gold medal because I knew a person who'd done it. And I'm quite a good rower. So one day I'll do that. And it was more than a bit of a dream. I really, in my heart, believed that one day I'd stand there and win this gold medal. So probably almost like a bit delusional, but really had this aspiration. But beyond that, a real belief for about 8 years, actually. So almost the whole time I rowed from when I was 15 or 16, just in the back of my mind, I was thinking about hopefully one day standing there knowing I was the best in the world at rowing. And so that sort of, when did I believe it? In a weird way, I sort of half believed it for many years, was just waiting for the Olympics so I could do it. Now clearly it's one thing to think you could do something, then there was the whole, am I fit enough, am I strong enough, and are we quick enough? And so what you didn't see in that race was we were actually miles behind. About halfway, we were just a really long way behind them. But we knew they would start the race fast, and we knew we were very fast at finishing the race. And so I guess, as with many things in life, sometimes you have to sort of stick with your plan. You know what you're good at, do your thing, and we stuck with our plan, and we trusted that if we did what we intended to do, we'd be fast and we'd go well. I can't say we knew we were going to get past them at the end of the race. We knew they would be a long way up and we'd be behind and we'd catch them. The little bit of clip you saw there was us having caught them up. But I don't know if you picked up the commentary I made, that I didn't know we were going to get past them till, like 5 seconds, 10 seconds of the race to go. Nothing really. I was looking across at their boat, and as I said in the thing, I saw the one of the guys in their boat just sort of stopped rowing, and I thought he'd stopped rowing because they'd gone past the line and he'd sort of won and didn't need to pull anymore. And then actually I realized he'd stopped rowing because we'd overtaken them, and then I took a couple of strokes knowing we'd won the Olympics, and that this dream, this vision, whatever you call it, I'd had for 8 years was a reality. So
and it was so dramatic. I mean very emotional to see, because I watched it live, as did probably the age of 14 I was, and so many people. The Olympics was huge, maybe bigger than it was now. And at that particular Olympics, obviously Linford Christie, Sally Gunn all won gold, but there were lots of other bronze medals and other medals for perhaps athletes and people in sport that weren't necessarily expected. And do you think that your gold, which I think was sort of earlier on, spurred on other people within the team? And did you speak to others within the GB Olympic team, for inspiration and support?
Yeah, I think nowadays the Olympic teams are much more aligned. I think they do lots of training camps. They're very lined up. I knew some of the other athletes, but actually in some cases we were like British spectators as well. We watched two of the rowers won on the Saturday, and we watched Linford Christie win the 100 on the Saturday night, and then we raced on the Sunday morning. I remember when he won, we went out on the balcony and cheered, and we're excited like sports fans. So I think there's definitely a feeling of, if you see someone achieve something, that, well, these things are possible. So I haven't had a conversation with someone who got a bronze medal or a silver medal say did they perform because we did, but I have talked to rowers across the years who said they've watched our race and the dramatic way we finished, and that was an inspiration to them about what's possible sometimes. So I suppose a lot of time, I think we meet people in all walks of life, and sometimes it takes meeting someone who's achieved something, that makes it more believable and more real. Whether it's a role model within a family who's whatever, teacher, doctor, lawyer, pick your job, who sort of is an inspiration or helps others think of things possible. So for me, it was this teacher who was I think he was normal. He was flesh and blood. He wasn't Superman, and that helped me believe it was possible. And I'm sure that some people who know me were in some way inspired, believed that it was possible for them to do a thing.
Well, I think it was, and when Gabby said you were coming on, it was incredible to have an Olympic gold medalist, and most importantly, a defining moment in the sporting world. And I think that you get that belief, especially from a finish against a pair that were possibly favourites for a race, and it led to inspiration. And when the 4x400 meter relay and Akabusi crossed the line, again, it was another moment that wasn't expected. And I think it probably, if not definitely, spurred on other athletes and certainly people in my era in sport just to see that Olympic game. So really, really amazing. I think my final question is just in terms of the future of British rowing. Obviously, everyone loves the annual boat race and, a sport, even if you're not into rowing. But are you familiar with sort of the future of British rowing and where Great Britain might achieve going forward?
Yeah, I think, I think you touched on this a little bit, but, certainly the future looks good, I think, for all British sport. Certainly the lottery money, when the National Lottery came along, that probably changed a lot of the way sport was done in this country. It was more funding for sport, and it got a lot more professional. Certainly when I was doing it, it was quite amateurish. So it tended to be the people who did well were the people who got a bit lucky or got a little group together and did well. The British rowing team now, they train on a purpose-built lake. There's some quite big sort of talent identification programs. So they find tall, basically tall young people, 15, 16-year-olds, and they support them in their growth. And with the funding comes high quality coaching. So I think we're likely to continue to be successful at rowing. I suppose as with all sport is many things to people. So there will be the elite performance. There's the stuff on you'd see on the television, but there's also people like I am today, training to stay fit. There's schools and clubs, and I think a lot of work has been done in trying to encourage a broader base of people to experience rowing. Historically it was perhaps the private schools and the universities, and I think there's a lot of work being done to encourage people all over to get different pleasure from the sport. So I think we'll be successful at the highest level, but I think we'll hopefully grow the sport and more people will enjoy it.
Fantastic, Jonny, real inspiration, fantastic memories, and back to Zara.
Thank you, Adam. Now we've got some questions from our audience. So first up, we have Sydney from Barnet.
Hiya.
Hi, Sydney.
So other sporting guests that we've been privileged enough to interview on JLGB Virtual have always kind of talked about how grit and resilience and determination are the key to success. So as an athlete, obviously you can't always win and there are injuries. So what's been the hardest or kind of the most unexpected challenge you've had to overcome in your career, and how did you learn and grow from it? I heard you broke some bones in a motorcycle accident. So did this stop you from competing?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two things about grit and determination, and my story is sort of, anyway, I'll tell you the story, and then you can make your own mind up about it. So I won a gold medal in '92, and then competed again in '96, as you heard, and got a bronze medal. And then I wanted to row again in 2000 at the 2000 Olympics to try and win again. It may sound a bit weird, but I was a bit disappointed about the bronze, and I thought I'm going to come back fitter, stronger than I'd ever been. And so actually in sort of 1999, I was really in good shape, and I was hoping to do the Sydney Olympics. And I started training that winter, and sort of October before the Sydney Olympics, I hurt my back, and then I couldn't train for about 5 or 6 weeks because I was injured. And then I trained for about 3 weeks, and then I got just well enough to get back involved in the national team. and we were on a training camp at altitude, and sort of, well, I'd say it's a freak accident. It's not a freak accident if you see rowers playing football, but we were playing five-a-side football, and we're all a bit clumsy, and I ran into a guy and bashed my ribs into his shoulder and broke my ribs. So that was sort of November through to January, so I couldn't train again for about 5 or 6 weeks. So by January, I'd probably trained for a couple of months and missed about 3 months. And I just got back in the team in about January, just about fit enough to be sort of on the edge of it. And as you mentioned there, I came off my motorbike and another motorbike landed on my arm and broke my arm. And so I carried on. I was training with one arm. I was in the gym cycling, and then I'd go out rowing with one arm in the boat. I had a guy who helped me train. He'd row with one arm, and we obviously rowed very slowly, but at least it allowed us to get in the boat. So I was so committed, so determined to go to the Olympics in 2000. So yeah, I mean, and eventually went to the trials in April that year. Now, I'd like to say the story has a happy ending, that we won the trials and I got in the team and I won a gold medal in Sydney, but I didn't. I wasn't quick enough. And so actually I tell that story, and at one level I think this is a great story of sort of grit and determination and getting knocked down and getting up. And I'm sort of proud that I did all I could to try to go to the games. But also sometimes think there is also a bit of a, luckily with the sport, I wasn't actually injuring myself, I wasn't making myself work, but I do think there's a lesson there sometimes in life where things are really tough and we keep going and we keep pushing and keep pushing. It's also important to just keep an eye out for yourself, and we all have a point at which this is enough now. And if I look at myself, I was definitely on that line of it's brave and bold and great to keep going, but we also have to have self-care as well and make sure that sometimes we say, okay, this is now, I need to look after myself. So I suppose I tell that story because I'm never quite sure if it's a great story of determination and commitment, or whether it's also a recognition that let's be mindful that we all have a point at which we need to look after ourselves.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sydney. Now we have a question from Abby, who's from Redbridge.
Hi. So
Hi, Abby.
in today's world, it's obviously not uncommon for people to have several careers in their lifetimes. And of course, due to coronavirus, some people may have had to retrain after unexpectedly losing their job. So the highs of winning a gold medal and the world of elite sport must have been hard to leave behind. So how did you transition to the legal world, and what advice do you have about that change?
Yeah. So I overlapped a little bit. So I was rowing and working for a while. As I said, it was all a bit more amateurish in those days. So I could row and work as a lawyer. So I suppose I'd say there were probably two levels of these transitions, and one is I'll call it the physical thing, where you start spending your time in the office or doing the different job. And then there's a kind of mental thing, which was I loved rowing. I loved rowing. I wanted to be great at rowing from when I was 14 through to, even 8 years after I finished rowing, I still loved rowing and I wanted to be good at it. And I had to sort of accept this is not a thing that I'm doing now. And I think, that's a challenge often with jobs as well. I did a job as a private practice lawyer for a while, and then I moved in-house to work as a lawyer in-house. And there was a bit of me that, I used to talk about we, as in we, the law firm I'd worked for many years after I was in the next job. Not that I didn't love the next job, but there's a sort of I suppose a bit of us is often attached to something we've had a good experience with. So don't know if that really answers the question. I think it's that both moving across physically and doing the thing, and also is it letting go or something like that. There's a sort of change curve that you may have come across. A sort of, people call it a grief, that anger and denial and bargaining, acceptance, and all this stuff. And I think that is applicable in many areas of life. A lot of people I work with, unfortunately, sometimes they're leaving the roles, and they don't want to be leaving the roles, and that can be harder, I think, when people have had to make a change. And you talked about people now. There are people in the entertainment business or flying or hospitality. It must be really tough for them, I think, at the moment, where a thing they probably love doing trained for and attached for, and they're having to change direction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Next, we have Maya from Liverpool.
Hi, Jonny.
I know.
Nice to meet you.
you.
You're now focused on your work as an executive coach, presenter, and facilitator. Can you tell us more about this, and also some of the methods, techniques, or mantras that you try to get clients to follow that we may be able to use in our futures?
Yeah, I can. There's long versions, short versions of this. What shall I say? I guess the start point for me, what drives me is I'm interested in helping people achieve success, whatever that looks like. So that may sound a bit, but really, I'm not about if someone. I'm not trying to determine what other people's success should look like. So if someone wants to be happy in their work, that can be a goal. If someone wants to get a promotion, that can be a goal. If someone gets a particular job, I'm pretty neutral about what I'm working with people on. So I suppose that's an underlying thing. Just keen to see people achieve success. I think it's a gut feeling that I think a lot of people are capable of more than they believe. So I suppose that's what underpins a lot of my work. I just think people sometimes don't recognize the talent, the ability, and the skills and the wherewithal that they have. So that I suppose a bit underpins what my work's about. If I was going to think of maybe two mantras, if that's right. One is about people's belief and understanding that probably most people know what's important to them and what they need to change. They may have to work it out. So I'm very much about helping people work out their own answers. I think it's very hard for me to have the answer to, if I was to try and guess what success looks like for you and start trying to tell you it without speaking to you, I'm very unlikely to find what that is. So I think it's really important. I try to help people understand what's important to them, who they are, and that kind of thing. And if I had one mantra, as a colleague of mine says this, I think it's quite a good one. He says, we should be the best versions of ourselves with skills. So we try and do the best of what we've got. We find places where we can do well, and then recognize that sometimes we might need some skills. So there may be things that we're good at, there may be things we're less good at, but if we can find a way to do the things that we're less good at, that's quite a neat way of thinking it. So I think rather than beating ourselves up that we can't do a certain thing, to recognize this thing's a bit harder. So I'll try and find a way to do that. So and to a certain extent, I think that comes from kind of self-knowledge and understanding who we are and what's important to us. So that makes it easier for us to recognize, okay, here's things I like, here's things I'm good at, here's things are a bit harder, and what am I going to do about that?
Thank you.
Useful, helpful, makes sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Maya. Next, we have Adam, who is also from Liverpool.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Jonny. So training and working all day with your brother probably has its ups and downs, as I'm sure it will do with any family working together. So how did you first become a rowing team, and do the advantages outweigh any sibling rivalry?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, because whenever I say to people, what's it like? What would you like rowing with your brother? There's different views, I guess, depending on how people get on with their siblings. How did we start training together? Well, Greg, my brother, is 3 years younger. He was at the same school. I guess I was a little bit ahead of him. I saw he was a fast rower as well, so it was slightly natural that we would come into boats together. So we got in the national team. We rowed in an 8 together one year in 1990 and 91. So we naturally started training together because we were both in the national team. I think from quite an early age, as I said, I wanted to win the Olympics. I recognized that he was good at rowing, and we got on well. He had a similar approach mentally to rowing, and he's very strong. I had a lot of respect for him, so actually I was quite keen to row with him from an early age. Was it advantage? Was it was it difficult? Sometimes it was difficult. as I said, I'm older. Again, I guess on here there may be people who are older siblings, younger siblings in some cases. I guess for quite a while I had a perception that I knew a bit more than he did about rowing. Some may recognize this sort of behavior one way or the other. And over time, he didn't always appreciate that level of maybe he didn't recognize that dynamic, and that was sometimes caused, I think, difficulties because I might give him some advice and he didn't always appreciate it. Let me put it like that. But I think on balance, we were so close, that trust, that love, that care, and that desire, common behavior, as you saw in that bit of the race where we were level, where we're totally exhausted and trying to find a way past these other people. That huge trust, commitment, love, and all that stuff, I think, definitely had a moment in the moments of the highest stress and pressure to help us find something extra.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. And now we have a question from Alex, who's from Mill Hill.
Hi, Jonny.
Hi, Alex.
So the Tokyo Olympics and the Paralympics will hopefully be held in 21 because they were postponed a year because of COVID. But what impact do you think the pandemic will have on those athletes in Team GB, and how do you think you would have coped if you were faced with the postponement?
So yeah, what effect will it have on them, and how would I have coped? Yeah, that's a good question. And they're really simple answers. I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know what it would be like to train for an Olympics that is going to happen probably in front of very small crowds or no crowds. Because while I can say for me, it was all about knowing I was the best in the world for this moment. It's hard to know what that would be like without crowds on, in the stadium or on the side of the course. I think, thinking back to how I was there, I was so focused on being the best in this particular event. I suspect it may affect the people less than we might think looking in from the outside. But that's slight speculation. I think the goal is it's a goal that people create themselves. On this date, every 4 years, I'm going to try and be as fast as I possibly can. So I suspect they can probably still create that drive, that determination. They've been training from years ago. For many of them, they'll have wanted to win the Olympics or compete in the Olympics for many, many years. So I'm thinking as I answer. So I suspect it will still be hugely important to those athletes. And I rode at World Championships with much smaller crowds now I think about it, and no television. So we won the Olympics in 92. We also won the World Championship in 93. And when I think about it, that brought me huge pleasure as well to win in 93, even though there weren't the crowds and there wasn't the television coverage. So I think it will probably be a different experience. But as I reflect on it now, they've been committed to these achievements for so long that I think it will still mean a huge amount to them.
Thank you.
That was a good one. That made me think. I didn't have a set answer for that.
And now we have a question from Talia, who's from Cardiff.
Hello.
Hi, Talia.
So Sir Steve Redgrave always talks about finding ways to make a boat go faster. Is it true that just before the race in 1992, you cut down the length of your rowing oars? Did this make a noticeable difference to your race time? And why do you think that others hadn't thought of doing this before?
Okay. Yeah, it is true. So the reason we did it was, imagine sort of basic kind of physics of, the boat goes along because you put the oar in the water and you lever yourself past the oar in the water. So if you were to take it to extreme, you have really super long oars and then very slow stroke rate and move a long way each stroke. We cut the handles off the oars so they were much shorter. So we took more strokes, but shorter strokes. So the other people we were racing against used to row at sort of 34 strokes a minute. moving the boat, a certain distance, and we rowed at about 38 strokes a minute, moving the boat not so far each stroke. I think that may have worked well for us because we previously rowed in the 8. In the 8 event, you row a lot higher rate. So I think it slightly suited our physiology the way we were, moving a little bit faster. So yes, it's true, we did that. It worked a little bit for us because we like to row at a higher stroke rate per minute than some of these other people. Why hadn't people thought of it? One of the things was, practically it's quite tricky because the oars are these big long plastic things and they've got a wooden handle. So we did literally have to saw 2 inches off the wooden handle. So I guess it was a sort of practical thing that once we'd done it, it was hard to go back. Nowadays the oars are more adjustable, so actually crews do adjust somewhat for their particular way of rowing, and the boats they're rowing in. I would like to pretend that they did that after our cutting down of the handles, but I don't think that's true. I think someone recognised it was useful to have more things you can adjust.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Talia. Now we have a question from Gaia, who's from Redbridge.
Hello.
Hi.
While you were studying at uni and your extracurricular activities were taking off, how did you manage to balance your time between rowing and your degree? Was this challenging, and do you have any tips for time management for students watching?
I might not be the best person to advise on that. What are my tips? I mean, I think broadly, I guess for many people, university is the time of growing in many ways and experience life away from home. I suppose a lot of people at university have, you might say, and it's probably the same for life to some extent. You have the sort of the work part, let's call it hobbies and interests and things, extracurricular activities, and then there's a sort of social part. And I suppose my advice, looking at my own experience, would be to make sure you get the right balance of those three things, and make sure you're not overloading any two of them to the detriment of the other. So I don't have any specific advice other than, given that university is a place where it's handy to learn and get a qualification, then it's probably a good idea to make sure you prioritize a reasonable amount of learning. For me, I had a funny experience because I was so obsessed with rowing when I was at university. I wanted to go to the Olympics. I trained a huge amount of the time, so I guess it was a slightly abnormal amount of time that I was putting into my hobby. But what would be my advice? I think to make sure you do enough work. That would be the simple thing. For a lot of people, I guess it's different. You've been at home. This school is quite structured. Again, if I look at my own experience, I work well in a structured environment. I found it harder to study when I was at university. It was less structure. There was more freedom to do what I wanted. I loved rowing. I did a lot of that. And I think just adapting and finding ways to create your own structure. Some people function well outside structure, and some people need a bit of structure to function well. To be honest, it's a thing I see in my work as well. We're all different. And if you're somebody who finds it a bit harder to function without the work structure, then try and create some. That would be my advice.
Thanks, Gaia. Next, we have a question from Emily, who's from Boreham Woods.
Hi, Jonny.
Hi.
As a consultant, you often work with clients about stress management and mental fitness. What advice do you have for young people trying to manage their mental health through this challenging time? What do you enjoy doing if you ever have time off? And what advice do you have for switching off and calming down after a tough or stressful day?
Yeah. Again, I wish I had like a really simple answer to this, but what I've noticed is that people are so different. So for me, I love getting on the rowing machine, as I have been today, and pushing as hard as I can for 20 minutes. So, an hour ago, my heart rate was at its absolute maximum. I was totally wiped out. That for me, I get some endorphins. I've been with some people. I absolutely love that. That is not going to be the right way for some some to calm themselves. For some, it might be, walking. For some, it might be cooking. For some, it might be some television watching. So I think my advice would be, one thing is work out what is best for you. Listen to other people, try other things out, but really establish what are the things that get me in my best place. So that's a sort of general rule. I really think work out what is the best thing for you to do. Make time for that. So that would be in terms of, a pursuit or a hobby or something. Do something that's for you. That's one thing. I did a biology degree originally, and I do think a lot of this stuff comes back to basic biology and looking after yourself as well. Two of the most simple things that it's laughable that I say them even, but sleep, getting 8 hours sleep. I notice when I get 8 hours sleep, I function much better. I can cope with much more stress, much more pressure than if I don't sleep enough. There's a really good book by a guy called Matthew Walker, I think it's called, and it's called Why We Sleep. And I would encourage anyone to read about sleep. And it's, he does a thing in there at one point where he says, if someone told you there's this thing you could do that reduces your risk of heart disease and cancer and obesity and, prolongs your life and blah, 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 everyone would be doing it. And it's sleep. So it just sounds daft, but sleep, I think sleep is really important. Basic nutrition, looking after yourself. I think recognizing what you can control, what you can't control is quite helpful. We used to talk about that in the rowing team. We used to talk about control the controllables was the expression we used. So a lot of time people in life are worrying about stuff that's out of their control. I think if you try and establish, is this the thing we control? Is this the thing I can do anything about? And then try and focus on those things. I think, particularly at the moment with coronavirus, I try to watch the news as little as possible. There's I don't know how you guys find it, but we're being fed all this information. Clearly there's a world of attracting eyeballs to this information. Lots of that information we can't do anything about. It's probably not directly relevant to us. So I'd really encourage people to maybe stay away from information that you can't do anything about, and that might be putting extra pressure on you. Sorry, now I'm running through a whole bunch of things. So there's a sort of checklist of these things. I think the other thing that is, again, a physiological thing that is so simple. Anytime you find yourself feeling a bit anxious, to do some breathing exercises. There's one I do quite a lot. It's this box breathing where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, you hold it out for 4 seconds. So you're just kind of going around a box. And I find if I'm ever stressed up about anything, whether it's speaking to a group of people or, I don't know, a difficult meeting or something going on, if I just do this most basic breathing exercise, then it gets me in a better place. And I read something about that recently, why it is. It's when we're anxious, if we do this breathing exercise, it's like we can force our heart rate down, we can force ourselves to calm down. It's a conscious way to manage anxiety and stress. And breathing is a thing we can control consciously, and it's like it tricks our body into thinking we're calm. So I think basic physiological stuff, sleep, breathing, those two things. Think about what you can control. Try not to worry about stuff you can't control. Do some stuff you enjoy. And for me, it's also about trying to think of the positives about what's going on. So a little bit of reframing what's happening. And maybe, the last one, which I think we talked about earlier, this thing about resilience and pushing through, and occasionally just saying, look, things sometimes in life are a bit tough, and I've just got to sort of push on through sometimes, and recognizing that sometimes there is no way around it, and you've just got to do that. But it's certainly a lot easier to push on through and be determined when you've had enough sleep, when you're eating well, when you're breathing. So, being positive and pushing on its own is not it's not a solution that can operate without the other bits. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Next, we have Louis from Cardiff.
Hi, so what I want to know is, do you still follow the latest goings on in rowing, and mainly who should we be looking out for as the future Team GB competitors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't follow it that much. So I'm aware. I think I know a few of the people who are involved now. Just some came through my rowing club, so I know them a bit. There's been a lot of changes recently. Almost the entire coaching team of both the men and the women have changed recently. There's been some sort of changes at the top level of the sport. I think both the men's and the women's 8 will be worth looking out for. We have quite a big pool of strong and fit rowers in the country, and have had success at the last Olympics in the 8s event. We won the 8 in 2016, and the men's side, and the silver in the women's 8. So I think those will be boats to look out for.
Thanks, Louis. So now I've got final 3 questions for you that we ask all of our guests. So the first one is, what's next for you? Like, is there any challenges you would still like to accomplish, or any roles that you still hope to achieve?
Challenges I'd like to accomplish. Yeah. I suppose what's next for me at some level is, and I think I touched on this earlier, there's a sort of, like, life goes through a few phases probably, and I think I said my younger son is turning 18 this year and is likely to go on a year out and go to university. And I suppose my next challenge would be experiencing probably life where my 2 boys have gone to university, and I think that will be somewhat different for me, because that has, that sort of day-to-day parenting has been a big part of my life and was very important from the moment my elder son was born. So I think that, I don't know if you call it a challenge, but that transition probably in my life is something that I'm not sure I can say I'm looking forward to that, but I will adapt to it. Adjusting to the boys not being around so much. So that's it's a period of change, I suppose, that I will be adapting to. That's probably the thing that I'm looking at. But in terms of a sort of thing I want to do, probably, I recognize that when I was young, I was probably a bit more focused on things to do, go to this university, get that job, win a gold medal, all that stuff. Probably, different phase of life now around. Some of it is just back to the basics of, as I said earlier, I've really enjoyed getting fit and looking after myself, and sort of coming back a bit more into looking after me. Yeah.
So, as we all know, these are unprecedented times, and the physical, mental health, economic and environmental impacts may affect us all in some way to come. But do you have any hope for the future, and what positives may come out of this strange time that we're all now living in?
What positives may come out? I think at a practical level, I suppose the fact that we've all learned to connect over Zoom. I do think there's some interesting things there that we maybe don't recognize, that this ability to communicate and connect with people in new ways is a real positive out of it. For some people, I think the sort of being at home and exercising, and that's been a positive that's come out of it, and remembering that this sort of looking after ourselves is important. I guess there'll be some interesting things around the environment and travel. I suppose probably all of us are aware of sort of climate change and the environment, and I guess less flying, less traveling. Will that have an impact? Perhaps people will think about that somewhat. So I suppose those are 3 3 thoughts, and perhaps just people appreciating what their life looks like as we move forwards, as a result of having a bunch of stuff taken away from us. Perhaps when we move back to being out and about a bit more, being able to meet people, and some things we did before, perhaps really valuing those.
So for our final question, this is the big one. So we always ask our guests to nominate and ask another celebrity or inspirational person to be a future guest on our programme and help entertain all the children and young people that are stuck at home. So if you've enjoyed tonight's experience, and we very much hope you have, is there anyone you might be able to ask to join us? Who would you like to nominate?
Who would I like to nominate Yeah, do I have to know this person, or do I just have to, I don't know. I might have to think about that. If I could ask anyone, I would like, I'm listening to a book at the moment by a guy called Tim Harford, who's an economist. He writes in the FT, and I'm finding his stuff really, really interesting because he's talking about data and facts and how important it is to look at facts and data. So maybe I should, I don't know him, maybe I should just contact him and see if he'd do it. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit, this is definitely off piste for me now, answering this question. Most people I know are rowers, so I'll have a think of who I can come up with.
Well, thank you so much, Jonny. We can't thank you enough for joining us this evening and for taking time to answer all our questions. We have really enjoyed hearing about your amazing career and are grateful for your inspiring and motivational words of wisdom. I have no doubt they will prove invaluable for all of our futures. On behalf of all the children, young people and families watching, thank you once again. We wish you well and good luck for what comes next. Please stay safe, take care, and we very much hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for all the questions, everyone.
And that's it, folks. Thank you for joining us for this episode of JLGB Virtual. Whether you've been watching live or catching up in your own time via JLGB HQ on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, or via our website at jlgb.org/virtual. Please take a moment right now to like, subscribe, and share this episode on whatever platform you are on so we can reach out and share some positivity with as many children, young people, and families all over the world. And if you're able to, why not consider making a donation at jlgb.org/donate. There's no show next week as it is Purim, but watch out on our social media for lots of Purim fun with our Shin Shinim throughout the week. We'll be back on Thursday, the 4th of March at the usual time with another incredible special guest. You won't want to miss that. Until then, stay safe, be well, have a great week, and good night, everyone.